What happens to a nation that receives prophets, miracles, and divine guidance, yet repeatedly turns away from the truth? For centuries, the children of Israel witnessed extraordinary events: seas split, prophets speaking the words of God, kingdoms rising under righteous leaders, and devastating punishments when corruption spread. Their history is not just a story of the past, it is a mirror for every generation. In this video, we will explore some of the most powerful and lesser-known moments from their history, from the wandering in the desert to the rise of great prophets like David and Solomon, the division of their kingdom, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the long years of exile. But more importantly, we will uncover the lessons Allah preserved in these stories. Lessons about faith, obedience, arrogance, patience, and the consequences of turning away from divine guidance. Throughout the Quran, Allah repeatedly reminds us of these events, not merely as history, but as warnings and guidance for humanity. This is not just history, it is a journey through faith, leadership, betrayal, repentance, and divine justice. Now, let us begin. The sun burns relentlessly over the endless desert. Sand stretches in every direction, horizon after horizon, as if the land itself refuses to offer an escape. And somewhere in this vast wilderness, a nation walks. Thousands of people, families, elders, children, all moving forward with hope that tomorrow will finally bring relief. But tomorrow always brings the same reality. They wake up, look around, and realize they are exactly where they were before. For 40 years, this nation wandered in the desert, not because they were lost, but because Allah had decreed it. This is one of the most powerful and sobering episodes in the history of the children of Israel, a story mentioned in the Quran as a warning and a lesson for us all. To understand why this happened, we must go back to the moment when this people had just witnessed one of the greatest miracles in human history. They had seen the sea split. They had escaped a tyrant who had oppressed them for generations. They had walked through walls of water while their enemy was drowned behind them. Their leader was the prophet Moses, known in Arabic as Musa, one of the greatest prophets ever sent by Allah. Through him, Allah had shown them signs beyond imagination. But miracles alone do not guarantee faith. After escaping oppression in Egypt, the children of Israel began their journey toward the blessed land that Allah had promised them. It was a land of stability, safety, and dignity. But reaching it required courage, trust in Allah, and unity. When they finally approached the land, Musa commanded them to enter and take possession of it, trusting in Allah's promise. Yet something unexpected happened. Fear spread among the people. They began to whisper among themselves. Reports had reached them that the land was inhabited by powerful nations, people strong in battle, fortified behind walls and cities. The courage that had filled their hearts during their escape from Pharaoh began to disappear. Instead of trusting the promise of Allah, many began to hesitate. Then some of them spoke openly to Musa. Their words were shocking. They said, "We will never enter that land as long as those people remain there. So you and your Lord go and fight. We will stay here." Imagine saying this to a prophet of Allah after witnessing miracles with your own eyes. Among the entire nation, only 2 righteous men stood up and urged the people to trust in Allah and enter the land. But their voices were drowned by fear and refusal. The majority refused to move forward. At that moment, the decree came. Because of their disobedience and lack of trust, Allah declared that they would wander in the desert for 40 years. The generation that had refused to enter the land would not live to see it. The Quran describes this decree clearly. The land was made forbidden to them for 40 years, during which they would wander through the earth. And so, the wandering began. Days turned into months, months turned into years, years turned into decades. A whole generation grew old beneath the desert sky. Children were born in the wilderness. Elders passed away without ever seeing the promised land. Yet, despite the punishment, Allah did not abandon them. Even in the desert, they received blessings. Food came from the sky, manna and quails, provisions sent by Allah so they would not starve. Clouds shaded them from the burning sun, and water miraculously flowed from a rock when Musa struck it with his staff. These miracles showed that even when a people disobey, Allah's mercy can still reach them. But the wandering was not only physical, it was spiritual. The desert became a place of transformation. The generation that had known slavery in Egypt slowly disappeared. A new generation grew up, stronger, more disciplined, and ready to trust in Allah. By the end of the 40 years, the people who had once refused to move forward were gone. In their place stood a new nation, a generation that had learned patience in the desert, faith through hardship, and reliance upon Allah alone. The wandering had not been meaningless. It had been preparation for the next chapter in their history. Because soon, leadership would pass from Musa to a new leader, a man who would guide this new generation into the land their parents had once refused to enter. His name was Joshua. And under his leadership, the story of the children of Israel would take a dramatic new turn. But before that happened, another event would test the faith of this nation in a way that would echo through history. A test involving a golden calf, a moment of betrayal, and a lesson about how easily people can fall into misguidance, even after witnessing miracles. If you are finding this story powerful so far, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe to Islamic Story Vault, like the video, and stay with us, because the next chapter reveals one of the most shocking moments in their history. A moment that shows how fragile faith can be when patience and knowledge disappear. The desert had barely settled after the Great Escape. The children of Israel were free. For the first time in generations, they were no longer slaves in Egypt. The tyrant who had oppressed them was gone, and the sea that once blocked their path had become the very instrument of their liberation. They had seen miracles that few people in history had ever witnessed, yet freedom brought a new test. Because faith is not only proven in moments of danger, it is often tested after the danger has passed. Their prophet and leader, Moses, had guided them out of Egypt and through the desert. But one day, he received a command from Allah. He was called to climb a sacred mountain to receive divine guidance for his people. That mountain was Mount Sinai. Before leaving, Musa appointed his brother Aaron, known in Arabic as Harun, to look after the people and maintain order during his absence. Musa then departed to meet his Lord. Days passed, then more days, then weeks. For the people waiting in the desert, uncertainty slowly began to grow. Whispers spread among the tribes. Where is Musa? Why has he not returned? What if something has happened to him? Fear and impatience began to weaken their resolve. And in moments like these, dangerous voices often rise. Among the people was a man known as Samiri. According to the Quranic narrative and classical interpretations, Samiri exploited the confusion spreading through the camp. He gathered jewelry that the people had brought with them from Egypt, ornaments of gold and precious metals. Then he did something that would shock the entire nation. He melted the gold and shaped it into the form of a calf. But he did not stop there. Through a trick involving airflow inside the statue, the golden calf produced a strange sound when the wind passed through it, a sound resembling the lowing of an animal. For people already shaken by Musa's absence, this spectacle was powerful. Samiri then made a shocking claim. He told them that this calf represented their god, and even claimed it was the god of Musa himself. Imagine the gravity of this moment. A nation that had just witnessed the power of Allah over Pharaoh, a nation that had walked through a divided sea, now stood before a statue made of melted jewelry. And many of them began to believe. Despite the warnings of Aaron, who tried desperately to stop them, the people gathered around the calf. Harun warned them, "You are being tested by this. Your Lord is the most merciful, so follow me and obey my command." But many refused to listen. Some even became angry with him, accusing him of weakness. The camp that had once echoed with gratitude to Allah, now filled with the sounds of celebration around an idol. It was one of the most shocking acts of betrayal in their history. And then Musa returned. After receiving divine revelation on Mount Sinai, Musa descended from the mountain carrying the sacred commandments. But before he even reached the camp, he sensed something was wrong. The noise, the chaos, the celebration. When he saw the golden calf and the people gathered around it, his heart filled with grief and anger. The Quran describes how he threw down the tablets he carried and confronted the people. He first turned to his brother Aaron. asking why he had not stopped them. Harun explained the truth. He had tried, he had warned them, but the people were on the verge of turning against him. Then Musa confronted Samiri. When questioned, Samiri admitted what he had done. His punishment was severe. He was cast out from society, condemned to live in isolation, a reminder of the corruption he had spread. But the incident left a deep scar on the nation. How could a people who had witnessed miracles fall into such error? The answer lies in a timeless truth. Miracles can open the eyes, but only knowledge, patience, and humility protect the heart. Without those, even the clearest signs can be forgotten. This event became a powerful lesson preserved in the Quran. It reminds believers that faith is fragile when emotions and ignorance take control. The children of Israel repented for what had happened, and under the leadership of Musa, the journey continued. But the desert still held many tests ahead. Their patience would be challenged again. Their obedience would be tested again. And the next trial would reveal another weakness that can destroy even the strongest communities: fear. Because soon, they would stand at the gates of a land promised to them by Allah, and many of them would refuse to enter. If this story is opening your eyes to the deep lessons of history, support the channel. Subscribe to Islamic Story Vault, like the video, and continue this journey with us. Because the next chapter reveals the moment when fear changed the destiny of an entire generation. Chapter 3. The refusal at the Promised Land years had passed since the children of Israel escaped from Syria. They had crossed the sea, survived the harsh desert, and witnessed countless signs through their prophet, Moses. Despite their mistakes, including the shocking episode of the golden calf, Allah had continued to guide them. Now they stood at the edge of a new chapter in their history. Before them lay a land rich in resources, fertile valleys, and fortified cities. This was the land that Allah had promised to them. For years, they had traveled toward this moment, and now they were finally here. Musa gathered the people and reminded them of Allah's favor upon them. He spoke to them about their freedom from tyranny, the miracles they had witnessed, and the guidance they had received. Then he gave them a command: enter the land, trust in Allah, move forward without fear. Because Allah had already promised them victory. But once again, something began to spread among the people: fear. Stories had circulated about the inhabitants of the land. They were described as strong warriors, people who lived in fortified cities and possessed great physical strength. Some among the children of Israel became terrified. Instead of remembering the miracles of Allah, they focused only on the power of their enemies. Their courage began to fade. Soon, the entire camp was filled with hesitation and worry. Some people even began arguing openly against Musa's command. They said, "There are powerful people in that land. We will never enter it while they remain there." Musa continued to encourage them. He reminded them that victory does not come from numbers or physical strength, but from trust in Allah. Among the entire nation, only 2 men stood up and supported the Prophet. They were righteous believers who understood the meaning of true reliance on Allah. These 2 men urged the people, "Enter through the gate. If you enter it, you will surely be victorious. Put your trust in Allah if you are truly believers." Their words carried courage and conviction, but the majority of the people refused to listen. Fear had taken control of their hearts. Then came one of the most shocking statements recorded in their history. They said to Musa, "You and your Lord go and fight. As for us, we will sit here." Imagine the weight of those words. After witnessing miracles, after being saved from slavery, after seeing the sea split before their eyes, they now refused to move forward. Musa felt deep sorrow. He turned to Allah and said that he had no power over them except himself and his brother. In that moment, a divine decree was revealed. Because of their refusal and lack of trust, the land would now be forbidden to them. They would wander the desert for 40 years. During that time, the generation that had refused to obey would gradually disappear. They would not enter the land. Instead, a new generation would grow up in the desert, a generation shaped by patience, hardship, and discipline. This decree changed the course of their history. What could have been a quick victory turned into 4 decades of wandering. But within this punishment was also wisdom. The desert would transform the nation. Those who had grown up in slavery had struggled to develop the courage needed to build a strong society. But their children would grow up differently. They would learn resilience. They would learn reliance on Allah, and they would be prepared for the responsibility their parents had rejected. This moment reveals one of the deepest lessons in the history of the children of Israel. A nation can witness miracles, it can receive guidance, it can even have prophets among them. But if fear replaces faith and hesitation replaces obedience, then opportunities can disappear for generations. The promised land was not taken away forever, but the generation that refused it would never see it. The desert would become their classroom, a place where faith, patience, and discipline would be rebuilt. And when the 40 years finally ended, leadership would pass to a new generation under a new leader, a man who had stood beside Musa from the beginning. His name was Joshua. Under his leadership, the nation would finally enter the land their parents had once refused. But even after that victory, their story would continue to unfold with new trials, new prophets, and new lessons for humanity. If you are discovering how powerful these historical lessons are, support the mission of this channel. Subscribe to Islamic Story Vault. Like the video and stay with us. And because the next chapter will reveal how the children of Israel finally entered the Promised Land and began building a new society. A moment of hope after 40 years of wandering. In Chapter 4, Entering the Land. After 40 years. 40 years. An entire generation had lived and died in the desert. Children who were born during the wandering had now grown into strong men and women. They had never known the slavery of Egypt, and they had grown up hearing the stories of the miracles of Allah and the leadership of the Prophet Moses. But time changes everything. Near the end of those 40 years, Musa himself would not enter the land that his people had once refused. His mission had been immense, to confront Pharaoh, to lead a nation out of slavery, and to guide them through one of the most difficult journeys in history. Before the children of Israel entered the land, leadership would pass to another man, a man who had stood beside Musa through many of these trials. His name was Joshua. Joshua, known in Islamic tradition as Yusha, had been one of the few who trusted Allah when others hesitated. When fear had spread among the people decades earlier, he had been among the voices encouraging them to move forward. Now, the moment had finally come. The generation that had refused to enter the land was gone. In their place stood a people shaped by the desert, a generation accustomed to hardship, discipline, and reliance upon Allah. Joshua gathered them and reminded them of their history. He spoke about the miracles of Allah, the warnings of the past, and the promise that had once been delayed but never cancelled. The land was still before them, and this time they would move forward. The land they approached was part of the region known historically as Canaan, a land of fertile valleys, rivers, and fortified cities. But entering it would not be easy. The people who lived there were still powerful, and the cities were still protected by walls. Yet the difference, this time, was not the strength of their enemies. The difference was the faith of the generation entering the land. According to historical accounts and traditional narrations, the first major obstacle they faced was the fortified city of Jericho. Jericho was known for its strong walls and strategic position. But the people followed Joshua with determination. They no longer hesitated like their parents had. They moved forward with discipline and trust in Allah. After the struggle and perseverance of many years, the children of Israel finally entered the land that had been promised to them generations earlier. For the first time in decades, they were no longer wanderers in the desert. They began to settle. Tribes established their territories. Fields were cultivated. Homes were built. A new chapter in their history had begun. But settling in the land brought new challenges, because the test of a nation does not end with victory. Sometimes, the greater test begins after success. With land, stability, and resources came new temptations. Would they remain grateful to Allah? Would they follow the guidance that had brought them this far? Or would prosperity slowly lead them back into the mistakes of the past? History shows that nations often struggle most not in times of hardship, but in times of comfort. And the children of Israel would soon face exactly this challenge. Their society would grow, new leaders would emerge, judges and prophets would guide the people. But eventually, the people would ask for something that would change their entire political system. They would demand a king, and that decision would lead to the rise of one of the most fascinating figures in their history. A humble man chosen by Allah to rule, a man known as Saul, or in Islamic tradition, Talut. His story would involve a small army, a test of faith, and a battle against a giant warrior whose name would echo through history. That warrior was Goliath, and the young man who would defeat him would later become one of the greatest kings and prophets in history. His name was David. If you are enjoying these powerful lessons from history, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe to Islamic Story Vault, like the video, and continue this journey with us. Because the next chapter will reveal how a small group of believers defeated a mighty army, and how a young shepherd changed the destiny of a nation. After the stunning victory against Goliath, the children of Israel experienced a new dawn. Their confidence was restored, and the young shepherd Dawood became a symbol of courage and faith. But David was more than a warrior. He was chosen by Allah to lead, to guide, and to bring justice to his people. His story marks the beginning of a kingdom built not only on strength, but also on wisdom and divine guidance. David's rise to kingship was not immediate. There were challenges from within and outside his community. Some tribes questioned his authority, while rival leaders sought to reclaim power. But David relied on what had always distinguished him: his faith, patience, and insight. He understood that leadership is not about dominating others, but about serving them with integrity and justice. Under David's guidance, the nation flourished. He established systems of justice that ensured fairness across tribes. The oppressed were heard, disputes were resolved, and governance was guided by principles that aligned with Allah's commandments. David was also a devout worshipper. He would spend nights in prayer, seeking Allah's guidance, not just for himself, but for the entire nation. His devotion became a model for all future leaders. Among his most remarkable gifts was the ability to receive divine revelation known as the Zabur, Psalms. These scriptures were guidance, filled with wisdom, poetry, and lessons that uplifted both the soul and the mind. David would recite them with sincerity, and the words resonated throughout the land, bringing both solace and moral guidance to his people. As David's kingdom stabilized, his son, Suleiman, grew under his tutelage. Solomon inherited more than just the throne. He inherited wisdom, faith, and a deep understanding of leadership. From a young age, Solomon showed an extraordinary grasp of justice, diplomacy, and strategy. But his greatest gift was a heart fully devoted to Allah, capable of understanding the mysteries of the world, both seen and unseen. When David passed away, Solomon became king. The transition was smooth because the people trusted the divine wisdom that guided their leaders. Solomon immediately faced immense responsibilities, managing the wealth of the kingdom, maintaining peace among tribes, and preparing defenses against enemies. But he also received from Allah a unique ability: the power to communicate with animals, control the wind, and govern the unseen forces that existed beyond human perception. Solomon's reign was a period of unmatched prosperity and wisdom. He built a kingdom that combined strength, fairness, and divine guidance. His judgments were known for their clarity and insight. Tribes came from distant lands to seek his counsel, and even powerful rulers marveled at his justice and intelligence. But Solomon's story is not just one of power. It is a story of responsibility, humility, and obedience to Allah, reminding us that true authority comes from submission to the divine. One of the greatest lessons from Solomon's kingdom is that knowledge, when combined with faith, transforms leadership. A king with wealth alone might rule by fear or force, but a king guided by Allah rules with justice, compassion, and foresight. The stories of David and Solomon teach us that courage, wisdom, and faith are the foundations of true success. As we reflect on this chapter, consider your own life. Are you seeking guidance from Allah in your decisions? Are you leading with justice, patience, and sincerity in your responsibilities? These are lessons that extend beyond kingdoms and armies. They apply to every one of us in our daily lives. If these stories of courage, wisdom, and faith inspire you, make sure to subscribe to Islamic Story Vault, like this video, and continue this journey with us. In the next chapter, we will explore the trials faced by the children of Israel under later kings and the lessons that can guide us through hardship and temptation. Don't miss it. The story continues. Chapter 7. Trials, Tribulations, and the Lessons of Faith. After the glorious reigns of David and Solomon, the children of Israel faced a period of trials that would test their faith, unity, and resilience. History shows that divine blessings are often accompanied by challenges, meant to teach lessons and strengthen character. This chapter delves into the struggles of a people chosen for greatness and the lessons that resonate with us even today. Despite the wisdom of Solomon, the nation could not escape human weakness. Division, jealousy, and forgetfulness crept in. Some tribes turned away from the teachings of Allah, pursuing worldly desires over divine guidance. This drift was subtle at first, but eventually led to open disputes and rebellion. Leaders who had once been devoted found themselves challenged by those who preferred personal gain to justice. During these trials, Allah continued to send guidance through prophets and signs. The stories of individuals who remained steadfast highlight the importance of patience, resilience, and unwavering faith. Among them were men and women whose courage and piety saved communities from chaos, demonstrating that true strength lies not in numbers or wealth, but in a heart aligned with Allah's will. One such lesson comes from the story of those who resisted temptation, even when surrounded by corruption. Their unwavering devotion became a beacon for others, showing that moral integrity is the foundation of lasting success. These individuals faced trials that tested every aspect of their being: family loyalty, personal ambition, and societal pressures. Yet their trust in Allah and adherence to divine guidance allowed them to prevail, teaching that faith is not passive. It requires courage and action. The children of Israel also learned that collective responsibility matters as much as personal devotion. When some turned away from righteousness, the entire community felt the consequences. This principle reminds us that our actions, whether good or bad, affect not only ourselves but those around us. Leaders who upheld justice and piety could guide the nation toward prosperity, while negligence or corruption led to suffering. These events also reveal the importance of repentance and humility. Even those who had once strayed could return to Allah's path and find forgiveness. This cycle of sin, accountability, and redemption underscores a profound truth. Divine mercy is always available, but one must actively seek it through sincere devotion, reflection, and action. Reflecting on these trials, we see parallels in our own lives. Challenges, whether in family, work, or community, test our patience, ethics, and commitment to truth. The stories of the children of Israel remind us that endurance, faith, and integrity are the keys to overcoming difficulties, no matter how overwhelming they appear. As this chapter closes, think about your own trials. Are you responding with patience and trust in Allah? Or are you swayed by immediate desires and pressures? Learning from history allows us to navigate our present with clarity and purpose. If this chapter inspires reflection and strengthens your faith, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Islamic Story Vault for more powerful stories from the Quran and prophetic history. In the next chapter, we will uncover the miraculous events during the Exodus and the divine signs that guided the children of Israel through seemingly impossible circumstances. Stay tuned. The story continues, and the lessons are eternal. Chapter 8. The Exodus and the Divine Miracles. The story of the Exodus is one of the most extraordinary accounts in the history of the children of Israel. It is a story of miracles, divine intervention, and unwavering faith, meant to guide and inspire believers across generations. In this chapter, we explore how Allah demonstrated His power, protected His chosen people, and revealed profound lessons for humanity. Moses, peace be upon him, stood as the fearless leader, facing Pharaoh and his army. The children of Israel, numbering hundreds of thousands, were trapped between an overwhelming army and the vast Red Sea. Fear and despair gripped their hearts, but Allah's plan was greater than their imagination. The sea, which seemed like an impassable barrier, became the pathway to salvation. At His command, Moses struck the sea with his staff, and the waters parted, forming towering walls on either side. As the children of Israel walked on dry land, the magnitude of the miracle was evident. The water, like towering mountains, protected them while Pharaoh and his army pursued. The divine intervention was so clear that even the most skeptical witnesses could not deny the power of Allah. Yet, human hesitation and fear remained a challenge. Many of the Israelites doubted and hesitated, teaching us that faith is not just witnessing miracles, but trusting in Allah in moments of uncertainty. This journey also highlights the significance of courage and leadership. Joshua, Yusha ibn Nun, and Caleb, Kalev ibn Yufna, two young men of remarkable faith, stood firm when the majority of their people faltered. They reminded the Israelites that success requires trust in Allah, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Their bravery became a beacon, showing that a few steadfast hearts can lead the many towards salvation. The trials did not end at the sea. The 40-year wandering in the desert was a direct consequence of the people's lack of trust and disobedience. Generations passed, children grew, elders died. Yet the lessons were clear. Obedience to Allah and reliance on Him are essential for guidance and prosperity. The desert became both a punishment and a profound classroom where Allah's wisdom shaped character and strengthened faith. Even in the harshest conditions, Allah provided. Manna and quails sustained the Israelites, and water flowed from rocks. These provisions were not just sustenance. They were signs meant to teach gratitude, patience, and dependence on Allah. The story reminds us that divine support often comes in ways we may not expect, yet always at the perfect time. Reflecting on the Exodus, we see parallels in our lives. We face challenges that seem impossible, barriers that block our path, enemies that pursue, and moments of doubt that cloud our hearts. Yet the story teaches that with faith, patience, and reliance on Allah, no obstacle is insurmountable. If this chapter inspires awe and strengthens your belief, remember to like this video and subscribe to Islamic Story Vault for more timeless stories from the Quran and prophetic history. In the next chapter, we will explore the conquest of the Holy Land, the rise of Joshua as a leader, and the lessons of courage, strategy, and faith that every believer can apply in their life. Stay with us, the journey continues. After the 40 years of wandering in the desert, the children of Israel finally faced the challenge that generations before them had feared. Entering the Holy Land promised to the descendants of Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. This chapter delves into the remarkable leadership of Joshua, Yusha ibn Nun, the divine guidance that accompanied him, and the profound lessons embedded in the conquest of Canaan. Joshua had been trained under the guidance of Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, witnessing miracles, learning patience, and understanding the importance of obedience to Allah. When Moses passed away, the responsibility of leading the Israelites fell upon him. Unlike many of his people, Joshua's heart was steadfast, filled with unwavering trust in Allah, ready to face the formidable inhabitants of the land. The Israelites stood before fortified cities, facing armies renowned for their strength and strategy. Yet, Joshua reminded them that victory was not determined by numbers, but by faith and devotion. He said, "Do not let your hearts be distracted by the grandeur of your enemies. Trust in Allah and march forward with courage." One of the most iconic miracles during this conquest was when the sun was commanded to stand still. The battle required time, and Allah granted Joshua this extraordinary sign, allowing the Israelites to gain the upper hand over their adversaries. This moment illustrates a profound principle. Divine support often comes in response to complete reliance and surrender to Allah. The Israelites conquered city after city, guided by divine instruction, and the spoils of war were shared according to Allah's command. Yet, a victory was not just territorial, it was moral and spiritual. In contrast, the committed believers, trusting in the divine wisdom, achieved remarkable success. The lesson is clear: faith and action must go hand in hand. Beyond the battlefield, Joshua's leadership demonstrated another vital principle: preparing the next generation. He trained men and women, instilled values, and ensured that the moral compass of the nation was anchored in Allah's guidance. The success of the conquest was therefore not just a military triumph, but a triumph of faith and vision. As we reflect on Joshua's story, we learn lessons for our own lives. Courage in the face of fear, unwavering trust in Allah during challenges, and the importance of preparing ourselves and those around us to carry forward the mission of faith. If this story inspires you, don't forget to like and subscribe to Islamic Story Vault to continue exploring the rich lessons of prophetic history. In the next chapter, we will uncover the intriguing tales of the Israelites' moral challenges, the consequences of disobedience, and the lessons for believers in every generation. Stay tuned. The journey continues.